She wasn't abandoned in one day. She was forgotten slowly. She used to wake up early. Not because she had somewhere to go, but because her body never learned how to rest. Even now, at 73, her eyes opened before the sun. The house was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that reminds you how long it's been since someone said your name. She sat at the edge of the bed for a moment, hands folded in her lap, listening to the silence like it might speak back. It never did. She moved slowly through the house, the same house she once kept alive. Walls still carried echoes, laughter, arguments, footsteps running late at night. All of it gone now. The kitchen light flickered as she turned it on. She didn't bother fixing it anymore. No one complained. She made one cup of tea. Just one. There was a time when this kitchen smelled like food all day long. When people sat around the table, impatient, hungry, loud. Back then, she ate last. Or sometimes not at all. Not because there wasn't enough, but because someone always needed something more. She remembered standing in that same kitchen, holding herself together, while everyone else fell apart. When they were sick, she stayed awake. When they were broke, she figured it out. When they were lost, she guided them. And she never once asked, "What about me?" Because she believed love meant giving. Endlessly. Years passed like that. Children grew. Lives moved on. New priorities replaced old promises. Calls became shorter. Visits became rare. Then excuses replaced both. She told herself it was normal. That this was life. But deep down, something hurt quietly. Not sharply. Not loudly. Just a dull ache. The kind you learn to live with. Because complaining feels selfish. She sat by the window now, watching strangers walk past her house. People with places to be. People someone was waiting for. She wondered, when she stopped being someone people waited for. Her hands trembled slightly, as she lifted the cup of tea. Not from age. From memory. She remembered birthdays she planned for others, and the ones no one remembered for her. She remembered holding people together, while slowly falling apart herself. And the hardest truth crept in gently. She wasn't missed. Not because she wasn't loved once, but because she had made herself easy to forget. Always available. Always understanding. Always there. When people don't have to worry about losing you, they stop noticing you exist. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She had cried enough in places no one ever saw. And as the day began outside, she whispered something she had never said out loud before. I gave them everything. Why was that still not enough? The morning passed quietly. She didn't notice the time anymore. Days no longer asked permission before leaving. She sat at the small dining table, the one that used to feel too small, when everyone was still around. Now it felt too big. Her phone lay face down beside her cup. She didn't check it. She had learned not to. At first, she used to keep it close. Volume high. Screen bright. Just in case. Just in case someone remembered. Just in case someone needed her again. But weeks of silence teach you things. They teach you how hope slowly embarrasses you. She stood up and began cleaning. Not because the house was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do. She wiped the same counter twice. Straightened things that were already straight. Cleaning was familiar. It was something she was good at. Something she had always done for others. When life felt heavy, she made herself useful. That's how she survived most of her life. Being needed felt like love. She stopped in the hallway, her eyes landing on an old family photo. Everyone was smiling, including her. She barely recognized that woman. In the photo, she stood slightly behind everyone else, one hand resting on a shoulder, the other holding a bag. She remembered that day. She had been tired. Her feet hurt. Her head ached. But she smiled anyway, because smiles made other people comfortable. She leaned closer to the frame, her fingers tracing the edges. Everyone in that picture had moved on. New homes. New lives. New reasons they were too busy. She stayed. Not because she had nowhere to go, but because she had nowhere she was invited to stay. She turned away from the photo before the tears came. Crying felt pointless now. There was no one to notice. Later that afternoon, she decided to go outside. The air was cool, gentle. The kind of day people shared with someone. She sat on a bench at the park, watching families pass by. Children ran ahead, laughing. Parents followed, pretending not to worry. She remembered holding hands too tight. Calling names too loudly. Being afraid of losing what she loved. Ironically, she lost it anyway. A woman sat at the other end of the bench, talking on her phone. "Yes, I'll call you later," the woman said casually. "I promise." The word promise echoed painfully. Promises had once meant something to her. Now they felt temporary. Disposable. She wondered if anyone had ever promised her they would stay. And if they did, when exactly they stopped meaning it. As the sun dipped lower, she felt that familiar ache in her chest. Not physical. Deeper. The ache of realizing you are no longer part of anyone's daily thoughts. She stood up slowly, her knees protesting. On the walk back home, she passed a small grocery store. She almost went in. Then she remembered, there was no one to cook for anymore. So she kept walking. Back inside the house, the quiet greeted her like an old companion. She didn't turn on the TV. Voices without presence only made things worse. She sat in her chair by the window again. This time, she allowed herself to think the thought she usually pushed away. What happens to people like her? The ones who gave without limits. The ones who didn't ask for much. The ones who believed love would come back eventually. She had done everything right. So why did it end like this? As night settled in, she whispered something into the empty room. "I was always there." Her voice shook. Why wasn't anyone there for me? The silence answered the only way it knew how. By staying silent. That night, sleep didn't come easily. It never did anymore. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Every sound felt louder when there was no one else breathing nearby. She turned onto her side and reached instinctively toward the empty space beside her. It was a habit she hadn't broken yet. That space had once held weight, warmth, a presence. Now it held memories. She closed her eyes, and as always, the past didn't ask permission. It came anyway. She remembered the years when everyone needed her at once. Morning started before sunrise. Breakfasts cooked. Lunches packed. Shoes tied. Problems solved. She remembered standing in kitchens, on phones, between rooms, always multitasking, always rushing. People used to say, "I don't know how you do it." She didn't either. She just did. There was never a moment to stop and ask, who was taking care of her? Because she had trained herself not to need that. She remembered the first time she realized something was changing. It wasn't dramatic. No argument. No goodbye. Just absence. A missed call that never came back. A visit postponed. A promise replaced with soon. Soon became later. Later became silence. At first, she defended them. They're busy. They have their own lives. I don't want to bother them. She said it so often. She started believing it. But deep down, a small, quiet truth was growing. She wasn't being forgotten accidentally. She was being forgotten conveniently. The memory shifted. A hospital room. White walls. Cold chairs. She had sat there for hours once, waiting. Not for herself. For someone else. She remembered the ache in her back. The stiffness in her legs. The hunger she ignored. She remembered refusing help. "I'm fine," she had said. She always said that. Because if she admitted she wasn't, someone might feel uncomfortable. And she had spent her life protecting people from discomfort, even at her own expense. In the memory, a nurse asked her softly, "Is someone coming to sit with you?" She smiled politely. "Oh, they're on their way." They weren't. She sat alone that day, until visiting hours ended. No one knew. No one asked. She opened her eyes suddenly, a tear slipping into her hairline. It surprised her. She hadn't cried in days. Crying required energy. And energy was something she rationed now. She pushed herself up and walked slowly to the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. She poured herself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. Her reflection stared back at her, from the dark window. Older. Smaller. But familiar. She wondered when exactly she had stopped being seen as a person, and started being seen as a role. The helper. The caregiver. The strong one. Those labels stayed, long after the love faded. She whispered to herself, as if confessing a secret. "I didn't mind giving." Her voice cracked. "I just thought someone would notice." The house didn't respond. It never did. She returned to her chair by the window, and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Outside, lights flickered on, in other homes. She imagined dinners. Conversations. Laughter. She didn't envy them. She just wondered, when her life had quietly exited that world. When she had gone, from being central, to being optional. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Her heart jumped. Just for a second. She reached for it with trembling fingers. A notification. An ad. She stared at the screen longer than she should have. Then she turned it face down. Hope hurt more than loneliness now. She closed her eyes, and let the quiet take over again. Somewhere deep inside, a thought formed. She was afraid to finish. If I disappeared tomorrow, how long would it take for someone to notice? She didn't want to know the answer. The next day began the same way most days did. Quietly. She woke before the alarm. Not because she needed to, but because sleep didn't hold her anymore. Her body ached in places she didn't remember injuring. She sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, gathering herself, as if standing up required permission. There was a time when mornings meant responsibility. People waiting. Things depending on her. Now, mornings simply arrived, and expected nothing. She made herself toast, and didn't finish it. Food tasted different when it wasn't shared. She carried her plate to the sink, and noticed her hands shaking slightly. She paused. Just for a moment. A thought crossed her mind, a dangerous one. Maybe I should call someone. The idea felt foreign. Who would she call? She stood there, plate still in her hands, and tried to think of a name. One that wouldn't feel like an interruption. One that wouldn't sigh before answering. One that wouldn't say, "Is everything okay?" in that tone that meant please say yes. Her chest tightened. She placed the plate down carefully, as if moving too fast might break her. She didn't make the call. She never did. Because asking for help felt like admitting failure. And she had been strong for too long to know how to stop. Later that afternoon, she remembered an appointment. A routine checkup. Nothing serious. She dressed slowly, choosing a sweater she used to wear often. Someone once told her it looked nice on her. She held on to compliments like keepsakes. At the clinic, the waiting room was full. People sat beside each other, leaning in, sharing quiet conversations. She took a seat alone. When the nurse called her name, it sounded smaller than she remembered. Inside the room, the doctor asked polite questions. "How have you been feeling?" She opened her mouth. This was it. This was the moment. She could say it. She could say she felt tired all the time. That some days felt heavier than others. That the quiet was starting to scare her. But instead, she smiled. "I'm fine," she said softly. The words came out automatically. They always did. The doctor nodded and moved on. She watched it happen, like someone observing their own life, from a distance. On the way home, she stopped at a small cafe. She hadn't planned to. Something about the warmth inside pulled her in. She ordered tea and sat near the window. Across from her, two women laughed over something small. She smiled without realizing it. Not because she was happy, but because the sound of laughter felt familiar. She imagined herself joining in once. She imagined being included, without needing to earn it. The thought made her throat tighten. She finished her tea slowly, and left without saying much. Back home, the house welcomed her the same way it always did. With nothing. She walked past the phone again. This time, she stopped. She picked it up. Her finger hovered over the screen. She could dial. Just to hear voice. Just to remind herself she still existed to someone. Her hand shook. Then she put the phone back down. Not today. She sat in her chair and stared at the wall. She wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. She just felt tired of being invisible. Tired of carrying pain, so no one else had to. As evening settled in, she whispered into the empty room. "I don't need much." Her voice barely carried. "I just needed someone to notice when I was struggling." The room stayed silent. And once again, she understood something painful. People don't leave all at once. They leave slowly. And by the time you realize it, you're already alone. That evening, something small happened. Something ordinary. And somehow, it hurt more than all the quiet days before it. She was sitting by the window when she heard laughter outside. Not loud. Just familiar. She leaned forward slightly and looked out. A car was parked across the street. The door was open. Voices floated through the air. She recognized them. Her heart reacted before her mind did. They were visiting someone else. Someone nearby. Someone who wasn't her. She watched as bags were carried inside. Food. Gifts. Someone said, "We should do this more often." They all agreed. She sat very still. No one looked her way. No one waved. Not because they were being cruel, but because she hadn't crossed their minds. That realization settled into her chest slowly, like something sinking. She had spent years making sure people didn't feel alone. And now, she was invisible in plain sight. She turned away from the window before the tears came. She didn't want to cry over something so small. But it wasn't small. It was confirmation. Later that night, she found herself opening an old drawer. She hadn't planned to. Her hands just knew where to go. Inside were things she had saved for years. Cards. Notes. Photos. Proof that she had once mattered. She picked up a folded piece of paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. It was a thank you note. Written years ago. You always know what to do. We don't know what we do without you. She read it slowly. Then again. The words felt strange now. Outdated. She whispered softly, I guess you figured it out. Her voice cracked. She set the note down and picked up a photograph. It showed her standing in the background. As usual. Holding something. Helping someone. She studied her own face. She looked tired. But proud. She remembered that day. She had been exhausted. Her back hurt. She had wanted to sit down. But someone had needed her. So she stood. She always stood. A thought came to her then. Sharp and unwelcome. What if they only loved what I gave? Not who I was? The question stayed. She closed the drawer carefully. And rested her hands in her lap. The house felt heavier now. As if the walls themselves had absorbed all the unspoken words. She thought about all the times she had said yes when she wanted to say no. All the times she had stayed quiet to keep the peace. All the moments she had minimized her pain so someone else could feel comfortable. She had believed love was built on sacrifice. She had been wrong. Love should not require disappearance. The realization hurt more than loneliness ever had. She wasn't just alone. She had been slowly erased. She sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she spoke, softly, honestly, for the first time in a long while. I gave everything I had. Her voice shook. And it still wasn't enough to make someone stay. The words hung in the air. No answer came. But something inside her shifted. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just a deep, aching understanding. She had been strong for everyone else. And in doing so, she had been forgotten. The days after that felt heavier. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just heavier. She woke up one morning and realized she hadn't spoken out loud in almost 2 days. The thought startled her. She tested her voice quietly. Hello. It sounded unfamiliar. Thin. Unused. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm mug, and stared at nothing. There was a time when silence felt peaceful. Now it felt like proof. Proof that no one was checking. No one was waiting. No one would notice if she disappeared for a while. That afternoon, she felt dizzy. Not suddenly. Gradually. The room tilted slightly. Then corrected itself. She grabbed the back of a chair. And waited. Her heart raced. This was different. She thought about calling someone. Just to tell them. She didn't feel right. Her phone was right there. She picked it up. Her finger hovered again. Over the same names. She always stopped at. She imagined the conversation. I don't feel well. Oh, right now? Can I call you back? She could already hear the pause. The inconvenience. Her chest tightened. She set the phone down. I'll be fine, she whispered. She always was. The dizziness passed, but the fear stayed. That night, she didn't cook. She didn't clean. She sat in her chair, with a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. She remembered other nights like this. Nights when someone else had been sick. When she had stayed awake. Checked foreheads. Whispered reassurances. She had never hesitated then. She wondered why it was so hard to offer herself the same care. A knock on the door startled her. Her heart jumped. For a split second, hope rushed in. She stood up too quickly, and felt the room spin again. She steadied herself, and walked slowly to the door. When she opened it, there was no one. Just a package. She stared at it for a moment. Then she picked it up, and carried it inside. It wasn't for her. Someone else's name, wrong address. She sat back down, the package still in her hands. The irony felt cruel. Even the knock wasn't meant for her. She laughed quietly. It surprised her. It wasn't joy. It was exhaustion finally leaking out. She placed the package by the door, to return later. Later had become her favorite word. Later for calls. Later for needs. Later for herself. As the rain grew heavier, so did her thoughts. She thought about all the moments she had told herself she didn't matter. All the times she had chosen silence over honesty. She had trained everyone, including herself, to believe she didn't need anything. And now, when she finally did, there was no one left to notice. She closed her eyes and let a tear fall. Just one. Then another. Her shoulders shook slightly. She didn't sob. She didn't wail. She cried the way people cry when they've been holding it in for decades. Quietly. Apologetically. As if even her pain might bother someone. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely there. I don't need much, she said. I just didn't want to be invisible. The rain kept falling. The house stayed quiet. And for the first time, she allowed herself to admit something she had always avoided. Being strong all your life doesn't protect you from being abandoned. Sometimes it's the reason